All right, welcome everyone to another episode of After the Pause. In this YouTube podcast series, Christy and I just talk about what it looks like to live courageously. It all started with our book, A Place Called Braverly. That's what sparked all of this. This book is truly just a dare to live courageously, dream boldly, and influence bravery in others. And what I love about this series is that it gives us the opportunity to talk to new friends that we've made along the way to figure out what does courage look like in their life. Because we could talk on and on about what it looks like in ours or just different topics about courage, but I love hearing from others too. So today we have Lindsay Bullock with us. Lindsay is a wife, a mom, a realtor, and recently a writer, which is awesome. So Lindsay, that is like a very brief overview of who you are. So go ahead and tell our friends who you are, where you are, and what you're up to.
Okay, currently I'm in my home office. So I live in Georgia. I'm a realtor, a licensed realtor in Georgia. I've been since 2017. I'm a wife and a mom of two biological kids and then one bonus kid from, my husband and I. So I recently got married, so I'm a newlywed technically. So in February 2022, we got married. But yeah, I've always been a lifelong writer, but I've kind of in my adult life, I'm like, oh, it's just a hobby. It's something that, people who don't need to work, that's what they do. So I've just recently kind of come full circle back to that. So that's kind of what I'm currently working on. Um, I'm in the process of creating a blog. So anyway, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love it. And I don't think I said this, but thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to get to dive
Well, thanks
into
for
a little
having
bit of your
me.
story. Yeah. Oh man. I'm so excited to dive into your story. I know that when we chatted a little bit in our pre-chat, you mentioned that your dream has always been to write, but for a long time you ran from this calling, which I think is a pretty normal thing. Maybe not for writing specifically, but like in
Mhm.
general, I think that that's something that a lot of people face. So what was it that brought you back to writing now? Tell us a little bit of your story and hearing that calling from God, but that fear and running from it. So just tell us a little bit about your story in that.
So as far as writing, I mean, I've been writing since I was 6. Like my teacher sent me to this like writing contest when I was 6 years old, and it was about my black
Oh,
cat, Whiskas, very thrilling like subject.
page turner.
Page turner. I mean, I was like barely able to read, barely able to write, but my
Oh.
teacher saw something in me, when I was in first grade. And I just remember thinking, oh, she thinks I can write.
Mm.
And so all through school, I was reading and writing, like reading and writing constantly. And that's all I dreamed about. So it's like I put all of my efforts towards that. And then when it was time for college, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna get a degree in communications and I'm gonna write professionally. Because back, you know, let's see, in 2002, when I graduated from high school. Okay. Okay. The internet really wasn't what it is now. I mean, there was just no viable way to be a professional writer unless you were writing for the media. And so I majored in communications, and I thought, okay, well, I'll be a professional writer. Well, media writing for me is extremely boring.
Mm.
Like, so boring. So boring. Like if you have to write a press release, it's just here's the facts. Isn't it wonderful what happened? Our company is so great.
Mhm.
That's the extent of PR writing. So, and I took a creative writing course in college, which was like really helpful, but also extremely discouraging
Mm.
because my writing teacher made it seem like you have to be perfect in order
Mm.
to write, in order to publish. And for a creative person, that's the most discouraging thing that you can tell them because they're already critical of themselves anyway. So for many years, I just put it on the shelf and I just said, well, I'm just going to, I mean, I continue to journal. I've been journaling since I was 12, like every day, every couple of days. So I just put it on a shelf. I still wrote creatively, but it was really more like prayer journal kind of stuff. You know, I would do narrative, but it would be a creative way to basically like talk to God,
Yeah.
you know, creative nonfiction kind of deal. And so it wasn't until, so I was married for 15 years and my first husband passed away in April of 2020. There was a divorce situation happening. There was some domestic violence there. And so I made the decision to divorce, and my kids and I had been separated from him for 6 months. And then he passed away by suicide.
Mm.
And so obviously that was a huge shift in my life, an enormous shift in my life. And so we moved from where we were to this very small town and just I moved back here. So we're on the west side of Atlanta. So I moved back here to start over. And my best friend lives here. So that's the reason why we moved back here. And I met my husband now. So that's why my name is Bullock now, because I got remarried. So it's wonderful. But I spent the next 2 years really healing and recovering and grieving with my kids and just walking through that with God. And so recently, so I got married in February 2022, and so my husband turned to me the other day in the kitchen and said, why are you running from your calling as a writer?
Mm.
And I was like, oh. why would you call me up like that? And so really it sent me on this journey with God, this continuing conversation with God about what difference does it make if I write? Does it even matter? If I write, will the world receive my words? Just all of those thought processes. So that's really how I've come full circle back to writing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's cool to hear. I always love to hear people's background, right? Like what has, obviously we're getting a very short version of your life, but what are things that have happened in your life to bring you to where you are now? And so I love hearing that. And then it always makes it really interesting to hear what your response is next, because like Kate said at the beginning, like this is a space where we've just been chatting about what does it look like to live with courage, to pursue a life that is courageous. And so I'm just curious for you then, what does it look like to practice courage?
So for me, I would say, because I know that this really is a lifelong calling, writing is a lifelong calling, and it's one that I've kind of run away from because I thought it was just for people who didn't have to work. I mean, because that's kind of the world's perception is writers aren't serious, employees, they aren't serious workers, whatever. So for me to live courageously, it means walking forward, even though I have no idea where it goes. I have no idea, like, who will be reading my words. I have no idea how they'll be received. I don't know how far the reach will go. And I don't know where that journey ends, So I have to keep walking, even though I have no idea what the conclusion is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that feels like one of the hardest things is just like, I mean, no matter what you're facing in life, like whatever is causing that fear, it is truly like, okay, I just need to take a step, even though I have no idea where the step will lead me, or even what will meet me when I take that step.
Right.
That is one of the hardest things, but it truly is one of the most important and like simple, not simple things about living courageously. Like we've talked about this with some of our other friends, where it's just like, just do it, which is like, okay, that's cool. But like, it truly is like, yeah, just do it. But that is one of the hardest things to actually do. So
Right.
I'm curious for you, like, are there like actually like specific practices that help you get to that point, or specific things that you do that help you just do it, or to actually take that step of courage, like because we can sometimes it literally is just like forcing yourself out there and forcing
Right.
yourself to take a step, but I think that those cases are actually like fewer than the ones that are like, okay, I have this practice that just helps me get into that mindset, that helps me take that step. So is there anything like that for you in your life?
So for me, I would just say that the secret of my life, I mean, you can point to anything that I have that's good in my life, like meeting my husband, you know, I mean, all of that, like the timing of that, when all that happened, and even walking through like previous years of really hardship and just mental illness with my first husband and my kid's dad. Like, my secret is really just walking with God.
Mm.
I mean, like you said, it sounds extremely simple. Like, ooh, if you're a believer, you know,
Yeah.
but some people think that walking with God means, oh, well, I attend church on Sunday, and I sometimes read a devotional, I spend 5 minutes with him in the morning or whatever. But it's really the strength and the backbone of my life.
Mm.
I mean, I've been journaling since I was 12. When I was about 15, it's like I realized that really these were all just prayers. You know, my journals were really just me talking to God about my life and about emotions and, you know, but if I don't spend that time with God, if I don't set aside time to be still and be quiet before him, um, I'm not going to have fuel for my day. I'm not going to I'm not going to know even what to write.
Mm.
You know, my inspiration really comes from him. And so for me, as a writer specifically, as a writer and as a believer, I had to get to the point to where I recognized that my talent or my writing is really his.
Mm.
It's really, it belongs to him. So, I spend time with him. And then, it's like there's a prayer on my wall that I pray, before I sit down to write. It's a prayer of consecration, that really I consecrate my life to the Holy Spirit, my gifting and my writing, every book, every word, every paragraph, everything. It's just a spiritual practice so that I can get in the right mindset, because this is ultimately not about me and my story and my talent. It's really not about that. It's really about communicating the reality of God to a world that doesn't believe that he even exists.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go off script for a second. Is this okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Just to throw you a question. One of the things that I think is so interesting about courage, and even just what you said about it's about, taking a step forward,
Mhm.
is that taking a step lends itself to like giving us more courage, right? Like that step that we've taken now becomes a benchmark of like, okay, I did that. So as that next step comes, like you can look back on this moment or whatever it is. So I'm just curious for you, if you wouldn't mind sharing, is there like a step, a moment that you would say this is like a benchmark, or even like a verse, a mantra that the Lord has given you that
Mm.
has become that benchmark for you of like, this is the thing that helps me take the step and then the next one?
So I would say something that I repeat to myself sometimes, when because there's a writer, his name is Stephen Pressfield, and he does a lot of writing about, it sounds silly, the process of writing, like the mental gymnastics that you have to go through in order to get words on the page.
Mhm.
And he talks about this unknown force. He calls it resistance, but it really comes down to fear. It's like you're afraid. Well, what if my words aren't good enough? And what if it doesn't sound right? And what if I never get published? And what if I'm just wasting my life? And what if I'm just wasting my time and all this kind of stuff? There's a book he wrote about this, and it's called Do the Work. So that's something I repeat to myself when I'm not, sometimes it's like we wake up under this cloud, like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to sit down and do the work. So I just repeat to myself, do the work. Write 5 sentences, write, for 5 minutes. And if I can do that, then the rest just pours forth.
Yeah.
So do the work, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. If it's something that God is calling you to, it's going to be something that's difficult, and you're going to need his help to do it.
Yeah.
So do the work.
That's a really good word. I feel like, right, that's a phrase that anyone can grab hold of and take to whatever situation they're dealing with, right? Whatever the step is that they need to take. It really boils down to that simple phrase of, okay, well, do the work. You want to see what's on the other side of this. Do the work to get there.
Yeah.
Or it's like Elizabeth Elliot said, do the next right thing. Like when she was overwhelmed after her husband's death, and the five missionaries that were killed in Ecuador in the 50s, they were killed by this tribe that they were trying to reach for Jesus.
Yeah.
When she was overwhelmed with grief and she had to raise her daughter, Valerie, she said, when you don't know what else to do the next right thing. And I'm like, that's such good advice.
I know.
It's so practical.
It is. And it's one of those things that's like, it can sound so like catchy and like, yeah, woo, like do the right and correct thing. But like, it's so easy to say and so difficult to do, but so important, right? Like sometimes we overcomplicate things, but at the end of the day, it's like, hey, we just got to do the next right thing. And if you don't quite know if what you're doing is the next right thing, maybe you just still try to take that step and trust that the Lord will like redirect you if it's not the next right thing.
Yeah. And he will.
Yep.
He will.
He does.
He'll come knocking at your door one day and he'll remind you, remember that thing that I've been calling you to do since you were little?
Oh yeah.
It's time to do that thing.
Yeah.
But I don't want to. I'm scared.
Yeah. Well, there was something you said too a little earlier, where you said that, this gift that you have is not yours. Like it's something that the Lord has given you and it's his. And Christy, you will know this as well. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Jonathan Helzer who says that worship is giving back to God what he first gave to us. Right? Do I have that right? Yeah. And that's what made me think of where this thing that you're doing with it, whether it's writing or whatever it is, in any of our lives, worship truly is giving back to God what he gave to us first. And so, in my life, like when I start to feel that fear, I think flipping it on its head and thinking like, man, I want this to be an act of worship to the Lord because like he first gave me this gift. I want to give it back. Like I'm writing for my audience or like whatever it is that you're doing it probably for somebody else. There is probably somebody at the end of that step, but at the end of the day, like it really is giving back to God what he first gave to us, and it's worship. So that was just, you said that and I was like, oh yes, like giving it back to him because he's the one that first gave it to us. I think that's so powerful.
Well, and I think about, if you think about like the Old Testament, you think about like the Israelites wandering in the desert for 40 years, and God fed them with manna, right? But if they tried to like preserve it in jars, like, oh, we're going to store up all this manna, whatever, it would rot. So
Mhm.
it's like, if you try to keep it for yourself, you keep it in your hand and you're like, it's mine. This is my thing. This is my gift. This is what I love, whatever. As a believer, it rots.
Yeah.
It's no use. And I mean, God had to very painfully show me,
Mm.
this gift isn't yours. Because I would write in the spirit of like, oh, I'm just going to write, I'm just going to pour out whatever creative juices are coming out of my head. And God had to, and I would feel terrible afterwards. This sounds really silly, but I would feel terrible emotionally afterwards. And
Mm.
for weeks, I'd be like, God, what's wrong with me? And God showed me it's because it belongs to Him.
Mm.
It's His gifting, it's His message that He desires to bring forward through us.
Yeah.
It's not about me.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, it's not about you. Like, oh, okay.
Everybody's favorite thing to hear.
Yep. Especially when they're afraid.
Right.
Yeah.
But I want it to be about me because I'm scared of doing this anyway.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Gosh, I feel like this has been full already of such like rich content and like so much good advice already given. So I'm sorry if this sounds repetitive, but to the woman who is longing, like the listener who's longing to just live with more courage, is there any other like piece of advice that you would add on to anything we've already talked about of like, this is what I would say to that person who wants to know how to live with more courage?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know. All I can say is that, as humans, as women, we have such limited resources, such limited time, and something that God has shown me over and over again is that our time on earth is short,
Mm.
and at the end of the day, we shouldn't be afraid to live out whatever it is God has placed in us. We shouldn't waste our time worrying about, well, what if this doesn't turn out right? Or what if I can't? Or what if I'm not good at it? We have to live in the immediacy of each moment and seize each moment, because we really don't know how long our lives will last. We really don't. We don't want to waste the time that we have. I guess that's my encouragement.
Yeah.
If you concentrate on, I'm afraid, and there's that thing that you want to do, but you're afraid of it, you don't have anything to lose. No, the only thing you lose is more abundance in your life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's a good word. That's a really good word, because I think sometimes we just get caught up in the fear and the anxiousness that it brings up in us, and we forget that that everything is just so temporary and finite, and even that moment of fear is like it's pretty temporary in the grand scheme of your story. So I think that's a really good word.
and I have one more thing to add to that. Okay, my favorite quote of all time. Okay, so it's Shawshank Redemption. Have y'all ever seen that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So Andy Dufresne is in the prison yard and he's talking to Red, and he's like, Andy, what's wrong with you? And he's like, Red, it really comes down to a choice, really. You either get busy living or you get busy dying. It's just that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like, walk towards life, not death. Like fear and anxiousness and all the things that we're afraid of, that's death. Walk towards living, because really our time is short. So that's my favorite quote of all time.
That's so good. I love it. Oh my gosh. Lindsay, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us and just sharing your story and just just some of the wisdom that the Lord has given you. Thank you so much for sharing that with our friends. How can people stay in touch with you, connect with you on social media, anything?
Okay.
How can they stay in touch?
So on Instagram, I'm just Lindsay Bullock Writer. I think that's what I think that's right. Lindsay Bullock Writer. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook under my first and last name. And I'm planning on, and I also have a TikTok channel, Lindsay Bullock Writer. So my plan is to start doing videos like with quotes like from different authors, that are inspiring to me, like quotes about, like, for example, you guys, quotes about courage, and doing videos about that. That's my plan. So I'm not I don't know, like being on video is just it's just kind of weird for me. So y'all can just pray for me. So yeah, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. And y'all can pray for me. Because my blog is going to be launched within the next like 4 to 6 weeks. And it's probably going to be called The Gray Haired Mama.
I love it.
That's probably what it's going to be called. Because I'm just embracing the gray hair. Like,
Yep.
I'm just
gotta.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Those are some hard won gray hairs. So
so just embrace them.
I've just stopped coloring my hair. Like, why didn't I like?
Oh yeah, just let it happen.
This is really me.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. We will include links to whatever we can in the description below.
Okay.
And yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us again. So on our website, A Place Called Bravely, friends. Christy, do you have your book? Oh, that's embarrassing.
Come on,
Christy
Christy.
doesn't have her
Come
book.
on.
Sorry, I totally called you out. Don't even worry about it.
I can't reach it.
It's so fine. It's so
okay,
fine.
So write it on a Post-it note and then put it like
Hold
in
it
front
up.
of the camera.
Oh man. Like I said at the beginning, it all started with this book, A Place Called Bravely. You can actually get a free ebook of this book on, I know, who doesn't love free things? On our website, A Place Called Bravely. We also created a small group guide, and it's on the website. You don't need the guide in order to do it with a small group, but it's just another resource, and it's also free on our website. So we're just so excited and just honored to get to walk with you, our viewer, our friend, as you're trying to seek to live with more courage. And so to close out, I want to just read a quote from the book, A Place Called Bravely. It's from chapter 3. Christy, if I'm not mistaken, that's yours. Woo! She's an amazing writer, guys. So this quote, it says, "He calls me courageous. The Father invites us to take courage because he recognizes that fear will wait in the place he's called us to and in the things that he's called us to do. He understands the power of fear shaking us and redirecting our steps. The Father invites us to take hold of courage as we come because it's what we need to stand among the waves." And I just think that's so perfect as we talk about just taking that next right step, embracing whatever calling God has put on your life. There's going to be fear in that space, but he has called you to come to that space. And he's given you the courage to do it as we trust in him. So friend, just know that we love you, we believe in you, and we're here for you on your journey. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us again.
It was so fun.
This is so good. And friends, we will see you next week with another episode of After the Pause.